Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel. My name is Amanda. I am a small seller on eBay, Niknax, and of course on Whatnot. My last video, I believe I had gone and picked up a few of these items here at the thrift store at City Thrift in Overland Park. I haven't done anything with them yet, cleaned them up or anything. I thought this would be a good time to kind of go over how I like to do that. So we'll get started. So you can see I've laid out several tools, several of which we will be using, several of which we likely will not, but I thought I'd bring them out anyway, just to help show you. Uh-oh. Daddy's talking chicken. What are you looking for? What are you looking for, Donut Head? What's he got? Oh, yeah, I better not miss out. Okay, so I typically always get some water. I'm using distilled water on these pieces because they, for one, they're bisque, but distilled water doesn't have, or allegedly wouldn't have, the minerals and things like that in it that can affect pieces to some degree, certain pieces. So given that it's bisque, it doesn't have any kind of coating to it to help protect it from said minerals and exposure, I try to use distilled water. Typically, I would use Castile soap, because it's a very mild detergent type soap, but I don't have any today, so we are just gonna wing it, and I used a couple drops of just mild Dawn dish soap, and that should be fine. I pulled out a couple pieces of dry eraser, and I usually take, you know, they come in like the rectangles, and I just cut them into pieces, just kind of roughly what I think I might need for the project. I have these on standby. I do not typically like to use them on bisque unless it is on an area of bisque that is unpainted, because they will remove the paint from the ceramic or porcelain. So just to keep that in mind. There's also the choice of not doing it at all, and that's sometimes an option I go with, just depending on what it is, the situation, that kind of thing. I did bring out a few different screwdrivers. My suggestion is have yourself, like, you know, one of those little handyman kit tools that you put together like in a fishing tackle box, and it's going to have several different sizes of flathead and Phillips screwdrivers. Get yourself some of those little hexagonal like key crank things. You know, you'll run into sometimes needing things like that. There's some weird hardware out there, but for the most part, the vast majority of it, especially on older things, you're going to be looking at Phillips and flathead. So at the very least, have a couple of those. It's possible we could need one of them on one of our pieces, like the music, figural music box. Just if the screws on the bottom need tightening or something like that. All right, so some other things I keep on hand just in case they're needed are things like this. It's a little woodworking tool. The blade on it's not terribly sharp. I sharpen it every once in a while, but it's good for getting, you know, like sometimes I have glazed pottery, and people will tend to use them for holding paintbrushes and things like that, or for whatever reason, however it happens, they have specks of paint that aren't part of the piece. They're just on there and they're dried on there. So you can scrape those off. If you can do it and you feel comfortable doing it, okay. But I would practice a little bit. The last thing you want to do is damage the piece. We're not going for restoration. We're not going for repair at this point here. We are just going for a cleanup, okay? Just in the same sense, if you bought elegant depression glassware, you would want to hopefully be able to maybe wash them up, you know, and make them look nice and presentable, because that certainly will help them sell better. Probably some of the most common tools that I use are things like this. This is like a bamboo skewer, okay? So it's like a very extremely long, giant toothpick. They're roughly a foot long, but there's occasions where, like down in vases or areas that an average size, you know, little toothpick won't necessarily get to, because as you can tell, there's a slight difference in their length. Now, these are the tools that I absolutely use the most, and probably the ones we'll be using the most of today. And the first and probably most important is this soft bristled, and it's even kind of dusty, just a simple paintbrush. And I use this on pieces to remove dust. It's very soft. The metal part can break fingers off of figurines and stuff, so you want to do this very delicately. But I do suggest you get even varying sizes of very soft bristled paintbrushes that you have just for purposes like this, like getting in cracks and crevices and being able to more easily remove dirt in delicate areas, dirt, dust, that kind of thing. The next two pieces here that I would say are probably on the top end scale of necessary are like a soft bristled toothbrush. Okay, I use these frequently to gently clean debris off of things when needed. But again, you always go into that with caution. Remove or clean just what's necessary and just what you feel comfortable with. People will still buy items that have dust on them. In fact, there's some people that do prefer it. There's a lot of people that prefer to have it arrive dust free, you know. But again, we're not talking about restoration of a piece. We're not talking about stripping the stain of anything. We're not talking about any of that. We're talking about just removing dust, essentially, and crud that can get on stuff that can be easily removed without impacting the integrity of the piece in any way. Another part similar to the toothbrush are things like these long bottle brushes. These come in handy more for things like vases or just those kind of tiny crevice areas that you can't really get the toothbrush head in. But you see I have this one kind of, you know, at an angle, but you can straighten that back out, and it works really well for getting dust in areas that you can't quite slide this into. Another thing that I strongly recommend that you have, especially if you do things like jewelry or coins or anything that requires fine sight ability, I would suggest getting some sort of a loop, a jeweler's loop. This one's not quite a jeweler's loop. It's pretty good. I think it's, I don't know, maybe 3 to 5 times. My regular jeweler's loop has disappeared. I'll find it later, but I thought I would bring this just to show as an example. These come in handy quite a bit to help you identify things like transfer print versus hand print or hand painting, things like that, when you're trying to investigate signatures, all those kinds of things. So I strongly recommend this. Or for damage, those are good. One thing I did not bring up here with me because I didn't think about it is a black light. And you can get a black light on Amazon for roughly $10 or less. That like a 365 black light that you'll want. You'd want to use that when you're looking at anything to see if it glows, of course, but more importantly, you're going to be looking for damage. Glue glows. Adhesives glow. You will find damage on pottery, glass, anything with the use of UV light. So I strongly recommend you get even just one of the little pocket ones. It will go a long way for you. Another extremely important, probably one of the most important things, is something like measuring tape. Now this one here is more like, for sewing per se, but I got this kind because it is soft. It's not going to damage a piece or anything like that. I can wrap it around, things like that. So I got one like this, but have a ruler or ruling device of some kind, because you're going to need that for your listings. You're going to need the dimensions of the item. You're going to need to know that for figuring out what size box it needs, all that kind of stuff. I also brought my scale down from the reselling room upstairs, just so we had it here for ease of convenience for this video. But you're gonna want to get a scale. I got mine, it's been a couple years, on Amazon. It was probably $20 or $30, but it is what they call like a postal scale, okay? And I would definitely recommend one that has this piece that you read it on separate, so you can have it pulled out, because your boxes will be often a little bit wider than just what this is. So I would recommend having it where it has a side box like this, but they're not terribly expensive, and you're going to need it because you're going to need to know the weight of your item packaged before you send it. Last but not least, towels and like dishcloths. I also have like the kitchen scrubber thing. I don't have one sitting here, but sometimes I'll get that out. Not on these kind of pieces, but occasionally I do have use for those. Usually like getting some grime off of vases and stuff like that, old mildew type, just the gross stuff. But you're gonna want to have a soft, clean rag. And then you're also, hi Theodore, gonna want to have, and I know this looks dirty, but it's just kind of a crud towel, but it's soft, okay? And so you're gonna want to have, at minimum, what we have laid out here. Then in addition, while I do things like this, while I clean up my piece, while I'm getting it ready to get photographed and doing all these things, I'm writing down on my sheets that I've made here, and it gives you an item description. I list any damage, any marks on it, the dimensions, the weight. I typically actually don't use these last couple of things, but it's average price, list ice, auction, and then the platform that I listed on, I'll circle. And so that helps keep me organized, so I know what all I have listed, what I have not listed, and I can go through and clean up and prep a whole bunch of things in one big batch, go photograph all those things in one big batch, and while I'm cleaning them up, I've already got their dimensions and everything, and so by the time photographs are done, all I have to do is list it. That's all that's left, and it's that easy. So I spend a great amount of time more so doing that even than this. But I strongly recommend, as a one-man band or a one-woman band here, I recommend doing that part of it while you're cleaning up the piece and stuff. Just grab the measurements, grab the weight, and then it's done. You can photograph it on your way. This one here is the Gorham, made in Japan. What does it say? From the gift world of Gorham. And you can see he's got his metal brackets and wind up and stuff on the bottom of here. It doesn't look like he's missing any screws or has any damage or any of that. It does have some felt little blue pads on the bottom there to protect him and the furniture. As you can see, he's got a good amount, of dusting going on here. And so we will take our paintbrush to start and we'll dust him off and then see what's left underneath. But I couldn't find any damage on him. I couldn't find any damage or repair, but again, we'll get a better idea of all that once he's cleaned up. All right, guys. So let's start with the easiest part first because, why not? Let's measure it, okay? So if I was eyeballing this, I would guess maybe somewhere around 4 inches, roughly in length. And let's find out. So, I was off. He's right about 5 1/4 inch long. Then let's turn him this way. And he is, I wonder if I can even do that. There we go. He is approximately 4 inches wide. All right. Then he's right at about 5 1/2 inches tall. Now let's weigh him. So we're going to turn on our handy duty scale here. It says 0. Great, lovely. I still clear it. And we are coming up at 14.5 ounces. There are 16 ounces to a pound, as I'm sure most of you know and don't need me to tell you as such. However, in this case, when I'm weighing an item, he was 14.5. I say he is 15 ounces. And then I write that on my book. Okay, so automatically at this point in time, I know just his weight alone, with the box, with the wrapping, packing material, that part is going to be at least a pound, no less, okay? This particular item is fairly delicate, okay? As you can see, there's a lot of pieces, a lot of parts on here that are going to need to be very delicately taken care of. And I will show you even how I typically do pieces like this, because I don't like to put even packing pressure on it. I like to make this its own cocoon that nothing's really kind of touching it. It just floats in its little happy box all by its little happy self. Okay, so we've got his measurements, right? What is he? Well, they're hummingbirds. There's 2 of them, okay? We notice there's some florals, applied florals down here. It's a bisque porcelain, right? And then, of course, it is stamped on the base with the information for Gorham. Okay, so that's a pretty good gist to get us started. Before we put any further efforts into uncovering the beautiful mystery and majesty of this piece, let's get the dust off of it. Okay, guys, so here's where the fun starts, right? I work my way typically top to bottom. I'm going to do my best to give you camera angles on this, but bear with me. I'll do what I can. So I'm going to try dusting off his head. Rub this on my pants a little. I try to make sure my brush is fairly dust free before I start, just so that I know how much of the dust coming off is him or a prior cleaning event. While I'm doing this, I'm checking everything that I possibly can, going as delicately as I can. And do not get me wrong, I have done this a few times, several anymore, and accidents do happen, breaks do happen. You learn from them, you keep going. This is not a multi-million-dollar piece, so it's okay. I would prefer to sell it in perfect condition, but it will not be the end of the world if he was to face an untimely event. But right now we're just kind of doing basic going over. So we've done most of our first bird. I haven't done much in the way of his flowers yet, just these first kind of couple petals here. But let's work on our second bird next. Clean our little friend's beak and face off. It seems to be coming off fairly easily. A lot of times it does. So there are some areas I see that I may come in and with the soft bristle toothbrush and gently clean up, but we're gonna finish getting the dust off first. And how dare I attempt to give you this advice without telling you about Q-tips. Q-tips come in handy for things like this as well, in the same sort of sense as something like this does, that just can get into areas that are not so easy to get to. For instance, there are some spots, all these areas that I will use the Q-tip to get in there and remove what the brush can't reach. So we'll keep working at what we can get. And then we'll start moving on to other tools. Typically, down around these tiny little flowers here, you know, it's like the, what do you call that? The pollen part, like that sticks up there. Those are usually going to be your most difficult areas to really get in there and get dust out. And that's even when things like this will come in handy, where you can get in there and kind of help scoop it out sometimes. Sometimes that's necessary. But these are very gentle measures that do not remove the paint. You know, and as long as you're gentle and you're not breaking it, you're not hurting it. In fact, you're increasing its value because you can show its beauty once again. It's hard for some people to look at items that are covered in dust and filth and see that sort of beauty in them. Not always though. But as I said, also this experience of doing this, while it is a bit time consuming, yes, it is worth it because it gives you a chance to actually truly look over kind of each and every petal. And it honestly looks like most all the gunk, most of it, some back here. These are Q-tip. But most of it has come off without much of a fight. All right, so now I want to not use this. I want to use this toothbrush, and I'm just going to put it in here. I'm going to dab it off. You don't want a lot of liquid. You want just dabs. You don't want water running down your figurine. You want dabs. Just light little dabs, because you are simply trying to remove whatever dirt remains to the best of your ability. But if it's areas you can't get to, you don't feel comfortable doing it, don't do it. Now this one, specifically in between this guy's wings, definitely needed a little extra help. But one of the reasons I like doing this is it definitely helps bring the piece back to life. Again, without affecting the integrity on it. Because see, I can see like dirt down here. So I was curious how much of this dirt around the rim here you can see was going to come off, and if I was going to have to use a magic eraser. And I'm really, right now, I don't think that's going to be the case. I think this is going to be as simple as some mild dish soap, and I would prefer it that way. So, and it looks like it's coming off without a problem. And we may have to come back and do a part 2. All right, so I think that pretty well does it for the cleanup on this. Now is more the moment we've all been waiting for. Does it work?